Hello, everyone. You're listening to Crunch Squad. It's a podcast within a podcast wherein we discuss the rules, the mechanics, and the number crunching that goes into this wonderful game of Dungeons and Dragons. I am your host for Crunch Squad, Ned Wilcock, and today we have a phenomenal, very special guest, Josh Lorimer.
Hello.
How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, man. This is awesome. I love all the extra content you guys are building around the episodes.
Yes, and we love every extra opportunity that we have to keep hanging out with you.
I'll take it, man. I'm in. You guys sold me. I love what you guys are doing at I Cast Fireball. So I'm happy to chat about any other nerd stuff that you guys want.
Yeah, and we have got some pretty nerdy stuff to talk about here. We're going to get hard into the mechanics of your character, Ralph.
Dude, and this guy gets nerdy. This is a Dungeon Master's player character.
Indeed. Just the joy of being able to finally play a character and min-maxing the crap out of it.
You know what? I love I'll be completely honest. Min-maxing is very fun. It's a very fun thing to do because you get to really test the limits of what you could do with a character. But truthfully, this was very much just I still try to let the roleplay lead and not the mechanics. But it would be, I feel like every time I'm playing a temporary character that I'm not doing for an extended campaign, that's when I roll really good stats.
So the first really interesting thing to me about Ralph was his subrace, because I actually have never heard of the Lythari elves before. So what drew you to this subrace?
I really like unique races, just because if I'm going to play an elf, because it's kind of a lot of people, it's a tired race to play. Everybody plays. Your first character is always an elf magic user. That's kind of
it's the quintessential fantasy race.
Yeah, and so I avoided them for a long time. And at this point, I've played so many different characters. I'm like, man, I think it'd be fun to explore the elf. But even then, I don't just want to be a regular elf. I wanted to. They're in the Sword Coast Adventures guide. There's this little, they got a little strip of paper that's taped on to a corner of one of the pages. And so in the section about elves, there's this little addendum that's rare elf races. And there's just one paragraph about the Lythari, just this little tiny write-up about these very fey ancestry elves who transform into wolves, just like a werewolf, but without it being dependent on the moon or a disease lycanthropy. So yeah, it was really interesting. Typically they travel in packs, and in Faerun they're very rare to see. So my understanding is that it is a Forgotten Realms race, canon to the Forgotten Realms. But yeah, I don't think the only place I could find them was in a couple pieces of literature, a couple books, and even then they're not mainstays. They're kind of just little pieces in the bigger stories.
Yeah, you are really getting your money's worth out of the Sword Coast Adventurers guide with this character, aren't you?
I am. That was my whole thing. Is I rarely play in the Sword Coast, and so or in the Forgotten Realms at all. And so the fact that your whole campaign is in the canon world, I was I really want to dig in. So I have all the books. So I just ripped them open and started reading a whole bunch, and then I listened to a couple audiobooks of old Forgotten Realms books about one that had some stuff to do with the Zentarim, and then one that had a character that was Lythari. But yeah,
man, the best kind of homework is homework for a D&D character.
Yes, absolutely.
So mechanically speaking, what made the Lythari unique for this character?
So one, I wanted to be a Bladesinger. In the Forgotten Realms, you have to be an elf for that. And so there are Bladesingers in the Zentarim, but I didn't feel like he would be with a pack, right? So for me, what made this character interesting was I feel like anybody who's in the Zentar, who's in the Zentarim, that kind of the shady organization, has to have a screwed up background. That's kind of that's clearly they've been beaten up and busted by life. And so what's better than this magical, rare fey elf creature that's supposed to be in a pack of other elves like him, but isn't. And it's very much there's something innately wrong about him being alone.
Yeah, so you find a new pack.
Yeah, you make a new pack. You kind of, but for me, when I think about the dealings and the leaders within that organization, it's all about like it's broken. Like nothing has, at least up to this point, nothing has fit perfectly. It's just been kind of like you're just putting a square in the hole to try just like to make it work as best you can. So I like the idea that this is a displaced character who's very much like a natural creature in unnatural environments.
Yeah, that's really fun. Just bringing the very granola kind of crunchy person into the middle of one of the biggest cities on the Sword Coast.
Yes.
And you mentioned that he is a Bladesinger wizard as well, which is such a ridiculously cool subclass.
Oh man, it is. I love it. There was I forget what it's called in 4E. There was a class that a buddy of mine played. Maybe it was Bladesinger. It was something like a melee wizard class in 4E, and it was really an interesting. It was an interesting class when you take a squishy class and you make it like a melee.
Yeah, a viable frontliner, which is not usually what you think of with a wizard.
Yeah, and so it comes with some stipulations, the mechanics of the Bladesinger, where you can't be heavily armored, so you can't have a shield, so you still gotta stay fairly squishy. But it's the blade song is like what that whole thing is about.
Yeah, so we're going to set the base for the mechanics of the Bladesinger by talking about just what the wizard themselves gets, and then we can see why it's such a big reversal to take the Bladesinger subclass.
Let's do it.
So, to me, the thing that the wizard is really for is it is the most straightforward spellcaster in the game.
Oh yeah.
With the sorcerer, you've got meta magic you can use to warp and alter your spells. Bards and clerics have like their support kind of stuff. Whereas the wizard, most of your progression through the game is just getting more and more spells, which might seem kind of boring, but the wizard has far and away the largest and most versatile spell list.
Yeah, what I always liked was they did this in previous editions of D&D. The wizard would, when they used a spell, the knowledge of it left their mind. And so rather than like spell slots, you just couldn't do a spell more than once really, and without having to study it again. And what's interesting about 5th edition is they basically are like, you have as many spells as you can write in your book, but you're limited as to how many you can use and prepare each day. So I love the idea that like you wake up in the morning and you go, okay, today's going to be very, I'm going to need to support people a lot. So I'm going to prepare a bunch of support spells from my book. And you spend an hour studying and prepping. And then like the next day you're like, I'm going to kick some butt. So you spend some time preparing a bunch of combat spells. But yeah, I feel like sometimes it's easy to latch on to specific spells and just make them your character's spells. But with a wizard, you can really make it as versatile as you want in terms of preparation and taking the time to like study and prepare. I don't know how deep everybody goes. Some people go so deep as to like keep track of the components of the spell as well, like whether you've got like a feather or a bit of ash.
Yeah, I think Liam O'Brien on Critical Role in Campaign 2 is very much into like the nitty-gritty of which components he's using. But yeah, with that spellbook, it's really easy for wizards to gain access to so many spells.
Oh yeah, you start studying and writing stuff down, learning from other wizards, and you find another wizard's book and you can start copying stuff over.
Yeah, like if you're a sorcerer, sure, you can do cool meta magic, but you learn a spell and that's it. That's like the spell that you know for the entire campaign. Whereas the wizard, when you start out, you can choose, I think it is 5 spells that you start with in your spellbook. 6 spells, 6 first level spells. And then every time you level up, you automatically get 2 more spells. And then if you find a spell scroll or another wizard's spellbook like you mentioned, you can spend some time to copy it down into your spellbook. And as long as that spell is in your book, you can prepare it every single day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy that like you're limited at how much you can do. I just love the idea that you can grow that list of known spells pretty exponentially. And it is fun. It's fun that like with so many other magic users, the magic is dependent on other external forces, you know, the earth, a patron, a deity. Like with wizards, it very much is an owned discipline.
Yeah, and I just love the vibe of it as well. I remember actually in Sneak Attack pretty early on in the campaign, that image of Akio spending time copying spells into his book, and he keeps getting interrupted, and it's just like, oh, that is such a vibe right there.
Yeah, and it's fun too if like you can play around with it if you want, where you can have a character who like maybe you miswrote a spell, something goes terribly awry.
Yeah, I just love the idea of, you know, you have your specific syntax for how you connect with these spells, how you put them down into your book. And so you're like reading through somebody else's notes and trying to figure out, okay, how do I turn this into my specific sort of spellcasting language, as it were?
Okay, so we never went into this on in the episodes. This was just like my own personal writing for Ralph, but I really wanted his spell book to be his blade. So like where I like the idea of the visual of it being and this is funny, I wrote this down before we ever recorded. I just never thought to bring it up while we were playing. But I really like the idea of the blade itself looking like Damascus steel, where that kind of the black and silver, like just like swirly lines. But if you look close enough, the black swirls are all text that's been like ingrained into the blade. That
is super cool.
So that's why it's like it's his spell casting focus, but it's also his spell book, everything written down into the blade itself. So that was how I like in my mind. I'm thinking I need a roguish wizard that can move around. A big tome is gonna be a burden to keep track of, and so that was where my kind of my little workaround.
Yeah, I'm glad we got that out, because that is super cool.
Yes, it also makes it really bad if he loses his blade.
Suddenly very powerless. Now, the next feature that wizards get after their spellcasting is called Arcane Recovery. And this is great because, you know, wizards, generally speaking, only regain their spell slots every short rest. But what a wizard can do is once per day when you finish a short rest, you can choose expended spell slots to recover. The spell slots can have a combined level that is equal to or less than half your wizard level rounded up, and none of the slots can be 6th level or higher. So it's a little bit hard to maybe wrap your mind around at first as far as like, okay, which spell slots can I get back? But just the fact that in the middle of the day, you can regain spell slots, which no other long rest spellcaster can do, is super great.
Yeah, it's awesome. Because you're kind of, especially at the lower levels, if you're talking like between levels like 1 and 5 for a wizard, you are in trouble. If you can't recover spells, you're kind of, the wizards are, even a high level wizard is not great at a siege. Like you're kind of you're a sprinter at all times. You got to get the job done with big flashy spells quickly, and hope that works. Because once you're out, you're just a dude in a robe. So yeah, it's that being able to recover some is a great mechanic.
Yeah, I love that analogy with the wizard. I've never actually thought of it that way before.
Yeah, it's from it's from the books. Like I've read so many D&D books. It's helped to inform, I think, a lot of perspectives about different classes that I hadn't thought of before. But yeah, there are some really strong wizards in some of the Forgotten Realms stories that get kind of in trouble because they're overextended and don't have time to rest.
Yeah, we put Ralph in some pretty interesting situations there.
I used almost all my spell slots, and did not have any time to recover anything. So yeah, it was by the end of that arc, I don't know when this will air, how much will be out, so I don't want to say too much. But we tore through those spells. I only had one level 4 spell.
Oh wow.
And I don't know, maybe I could, no, I won't say what it was, but I secretly cast it in episode 56 of your guys, that first episode that came out this last week. And it was something that I talked about with Thomas. But yeah, I don't think I've ever said what it was yet, but it was my only, I think the level I'm at, level 7, Bladesinger. So it was the one 4th level spell slot I had.
Well, someday I'll figure out what it is, but at time of recording, it's still a secret. Now, the base wizard class mechanically after this point is actually pretty plain. You get your arcane tradition, your subclass at level 2, and that gives you some new mechanics. But just as the wizard itself, you get some ability score improvements, you keep learning more spells and getting more spell slots, but then at level 18, you get something called spell mastery.
When we're getting this high, you're basically like god tier wizard.
Yeah, the way that this works is you can cast certain spells at will. So you can choose a 1st level wizard spell and a 2nd level wizard spell that are in your book, and you can cast those spells at their lowest level without expending a spell slot when you have them prepared.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the idea that you have at this point becomes so enmeshed with these spells that you've been casting for so long that's just like, oh yeah, I know the spell like the back of my hand, I can just pop it off whenever.
I don't think I've ever gotten a player character to that high level, but like, I don't know what I'd do with myself as a magic user at that point.
Yeah, and you still even have some variety because every 8 hours, if you sit down and spend 8 hours in study, you can swap out one or both of those spells for a different one that you can cast at will.
Wow. That's so epic. That's Elminster level magic use right there.
Yeah, this is the point where we're like, yes, this is the Gandalf that we know and love from Lord of the Rings.
Yep, it's Fizzban.
But it gets even better at level 20 with signature spells, and at this point you can choose 2 3rd level wizard spells in your spellbook as your signature spells. You always have those spells prepared. They don't count against the number of spells you can have prepared, and you can cast each of them once at 3rd level per short rest without expending a spell slot.
Insane. That's awesome. Holy moly. So just counterspell, just dispel magic.
Exactly.
Whenever you want, for free.
Yeah, it's insane. Just like the potential, there's some really good spells at 3rd level. You've got counterspell, dispel magic, like you said. You've got fireball. You could just cast fireball whenever you want to. That is a wizard dream right there.
Fireball.
And so that does it for the meat and potatoes of the wizard, and there's lots of very flavorful subclasses that help you kind of tweak your magic, but we're talking about the one that I think is just flavor-wise the most fascinating and unique of all of the subclasses. So part of the limitations of being a spellcaster, especially being a wizard, is you cannot wear armor to cast your spells. It interferes with the intricate, delicate motions of your spellcasting. But then, looking at the very first Bladesinger feature, Training in War and Song, you gain proficiency with light armor, so you can wear that armor and still be able to cast your spells. You gain proficiency in one type of one-handed melee weapon of your choice, i.e. Jeremy in this instance, and just for fun you gain proficiency in performance as well if you don't already have it.
And what's really fun in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, they have another one of those little addendums to the, like one of those little like asides, little sticky note in the page about the different blades that a Bladesinger uses and the different styles, and it's just flavor, which is I love just having flavor. So it was like, if you're using a long sword, it's a lion style. It's like a different stance. Or if you're using, it's a wolf style, which involves a lot of like spinning and flourishes. If it's a scimitar, it's like I love the idea that it's not just one form of blade fighting. It's very much and when I was building Ralph, there was one combo because I'm level enough that I was able to get a feat for the character, and there's one feat that allows you to do 2 weapon wielding, even if you're not a fighter class. And in my head, I thought, there's nothing in the Bladesinger mechanics that says you can't have another blade. It just says you can't have a shield, and you have to be wielding a one-handed weapon. 2 one-handed weapons could still work, and that's crazy. I was like, that would be min-maxing at that point. You got an extra attack, you've got full attack bonuses for 2 swords during the blade song, which is just absolutely bonkers. So for a while I thought it would be really fun to have 2 long swords. You're not wielding them with 2 hands, so you're just doing the D8, but like that's pretty legit. Yeah, let's dig into the mechanics of the blade song itself, because this is the core of this subclass. It is like Rage. It is like the Barbarian's Rage. You activate it, and you get all this cool stuff.
Yeah, so the stipulations, like you mentioned, there are a few of those. First, you have to be an elf. That's more specifically in the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide version. They actually re-released the Bladesinger wizard in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything with, insofar as I'm aware, just 3 pretty minor differences. The first being that in Sword Coast Adventurers Guide, it specifically says you gotta be an elf. It doesn't outright say that in the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything version, but still kind of implied. But yeah, so first stipulation, gotta be an elf. Second, you can't wear medium or heavy armor or use a shield, like you mentioned. But as long as you meet those criteria, you can use your bonus action to start the blade song, which lasts for 1 minute. If you are incapacitated, or if you don medium or heavy armor or a shield, or if you use 2 hands to make an attack with a weapon, then the blade song ends. And you can also dismiss it at any time, no action required. But then we get to the benefits of all of those stipulations. First, you gain a bonus to your armor class equal to your intelligence modifier.
Which is insane. Mm-hmm. As a wizard, that's the modifier you're beefing up.
Yeah. So let's talk about Ralph specifically. So what kind of armor are you wearing with Ralph?
Just the basic in-book leather armor.
Yeah, so that gives you, as I recall it, an armor class of 11 plus your dexterity modifier, right?
Let's see here. 11 plus dex. Yeah, and I have a 5 dex. So my dexterity is 20. It's maxed out to 20. Yeah, that was so I made it as high as you can go. So it gives me an armor class as a wizard of 16.
Yeah, which traditionally your armor class, if you're a wizard, is just going to be 10 plus your dexterity modifier, which usually isn't very good if you're a wizard.
Because you don't put stuff into dexterity as a wizard usually.
Yeah, but then when you start your blade song, what's your intelligence modifier that you get to add to that?
3.
Okay, so suddenly we've got 19 AC on this squishy wizard.
And what's cool is it's all dex based. So it's not because I can take a bunch of damage. It's because of how elegantly he can maneuver in and out of combat.
Yeah, it goes with that song, that dance. And let's see, Jeremy is a scimitar, correct? So did you choose the wolf style with all of that kind of circular motion?
Yes, I like the idea that it's because he turns into a wolf, I felt like that was a really good kind of to play off of, very flowy and elegant and elf-like.
Just dancing around all of the blows.
Yeah, one thing we never did in the arc that we play with Jeremy is where he actually puts the blade in his mouth and fights as a wolf.
Ooh.
But I don't know, that is something that we would just put Thomas in a weird position as DM, being I don't know how to if this is legit or not. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
But that's the I feel like what is it? Dark Souls? Is there a big boss that's like a wolf with a sword?
Yeah, I have not played any of the FromSoft games yet, but when I get my Steam Deck, I sure will. But it's either one of the Dark Souls games or Elden Ring, just a wolf with a huge sword in its mouth.
So that was another part of it for me going oh, this would be kind of cool.
Well, yeah, we've still got, at time of recording, maybe we'll still get a chance to see it happen. Who knows?
It's all right, man. Here's my thing is I would have been okay. You build a character with tons of stuff. I'm okay if it doesn't all come out during a game. That's part of the fun. Mm-hmm. It's just having all of that in the wings.
Yes, we know, and that's special enough. Now, next thing you get with your blade song, it's not just your armor class. Your walking speed also increases 10 feet. You have advantage on acrobatics checks, and whenever you make a con save to maintain concentration on your spell, you can add your intelligence modifier to that roll as well.
And so this is here's something I did min-max. I will fully own this one. So I'm a wood elf. Mechanically the Lythari are basically wood elves that can transform into wolves. They don't have the midway transformation of a werewolf where you're a humanoid wolf. It's just either full elf, full wolf. But the wood elf has a movement speed of 35. That's their baseline. And when I picked the feat wood elf magic, one of the spells it grants you that you can cast without using a spell slot is Longstrider. So
nice.
If I'm in the Blade Song as a Lythari elf and I cast Longstrider, that's 55 feet.
Holy cow.
Per turn.
Which is very nearly double what most people are making.
Yeah, and then if you dash, that's 110.
Which is insane. Like, this isn't a monk. Monks can run really fast, sure. This is a wizard. Wizards are supposed to be able to do this stuff.
So yeah, there's some fun. It's so fun seeing how some of these feats can start to actually beef up different parts of your character.
And so that's the benefits you get from the Blade Song, and the amount of times you can use that. This is the second difference between the two different versions. In the original, I believe it was you can use it twice per short rest. In the Tasha's version, you can use it a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest.
I feel like one of the things that makes the Blade Song, that keeps the Blade Song somewhat nerfed, is the 1 minute time.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you're using this outside of combat, it's more or less useless. It's going to run out just right away. It's only really useful in combat where time slows down and every round is only 6 seconds. And so you've got 10 rounds to be in the Blade Song, which is really cool. I like that they've kind of conditioned it for very specific uses.
That sounds almost to me like something that a coach would say to the young Bladesinger recruits before the game. You only got 10 rounds in the Blade Song. Make sure they're worth it.
Yes, which is it's a very elf thing. It's like if you're going to do this, you have to do it very precisely at the exact right time, very tested and tried and focused.
Yeah. Now we get to 6th level, you get your extra attack, which is something that, fighters get, rangers get, all of these classes get. Wizards aren't supposed to get it, but now here you go. You can attack twice instead of once whenever you take the attack action, and this is, to my understanding, the final change that they made in Tasha's.
This is the OP. This is the insane part.
Instead of just making 2 sword attacks, you can replace one of those with a cantrip attack instead.
Yeah, and I think the only other class that can do this, you correct me if I'm wrong, is a Eldritch Knight. I think at a certain level, the Eldritch Knight they have extra attack, and I think it's later. I think maybe level 7 they unlock the ability to use one of their extra attacks as a cantrip.
Yeah, it's been a while since we played Greyk, so maybe not sure exactly which level it is, but yeah, very great. And what is so great about this as well is your weapons damage die is static throughout the entire time you're using it, but your cantrip's damage die scales the further you get up in your level.
Yeah, so you're really at that point you can deal some serious damage. And I love the picture of this flowy, elegant blade fighting mixed with a magical blast. And okay, so in flavor, all of my cantrips are blade based.
Oh, nice.
Booming blade, green flame blade, sword burst, blade ward.
Dude,
I tried to stay in the vein of the class.
Yeah, for me, that's one of the joys of having these very specific archetypes, is kind of really just leaning into it and being like, I'm going to be the most blade singer that ever did sing with a blade.
Yes, absolutely. And what's great is I can't talk about it because it hasn't happened yet. But yeah, I want to talk about Jeremy, but I can't talk about Jeremy yet.
Yeah, maybe someday. Now, the next feature that we get for the Bladesinger at 10th level is the Song of Defense. So instead of just the fact that you have 19 AC while your Blade Song is active, now, whenever you take damage, you can use your reaction to expend one spell slot and reduce the damage taken by an amount equal to 5 times that spell slot's level.
That's insane.
So not only are you super hard to hit in the first place, but when somebody finally does manage to land a hit on you, you're just like, yeah, that didn't actually hurt that much.
What level spells do you have by 10th level?
By 10th level, let's take a gander in the book here. At 10th level, you have 2 5th level spell slots. Okay, that's your highest level at that point.
So at that point, you're talking, so when the first time you get this, 5 times the spell slot's level. So you can use You can take 25 damage off.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
Yeah, I just can't get over how great of a frontliner this is, and like I've said many, many times, Wizards shouldn't be able to do this, and yet here we are.
Yeah, it's like it's very interesting. I'm curious what a Bladesinger would look like going up against like an evocation focused wizard, like that's fully wizard focused. Like, it's so fascinating to me because I do feel like the other subclasses of wizard would have a bit of a magical leg up on the Bladesinger. I think the difference is I think Bladesingers can last longer than a regular wizard. Yeah. I think they're probably more of the long distance runner of the wizard family, where most wizards are sprinters, are like high output, real fast, end everything. I think if a Bladesinger's battling a wizard of another subclass, it's all a matter of can they wear him out? Can they survive through the melee of epic spells long enough to weed down the wizard's defense and get in?
Yeah, that thematically is really where we see this subclass just turn the entire wizard on its head. And then we have one final feature. The capstone feature for the Bladesinger comes at level 14, Song of Victory. And at this point, you just get more damage because whenever you hit with a melee weapon attack and your Blade Song is active, you can add your intelligence not only to your armor class, not only to your constitution checks, but you can also add it to your damage as well.
My goodness. And if you're using a scimitar, that's dex-based. That is a finesse weapon. So if you've already boosted your dexterity, then your attacks are being boosted by dex. So really, I built the blade. I built Ralph. He has two good, really good abilities, and it's his intelligence and his dexterity, and that's it. With the Bladesinger, that's it. That's all that matters. I have a -1 charisma, as we'll see. But yeah, it's very, very fun.
Yeah, and by the time Ralph reaches level 14, definitely actually going to happen.
If he lives long enough.
Yeah, going to have the opportunity to boost that intelligence modifier as well with some ability score improvements.
Yep.
So very reasonably, you could be doing +10 to each of your attacks just from dex and intelligence damage.
Gosh, yeah, that's crazy. And in truth, I didn't take the ability modifier buff. Does the wizard get an ability modifier buff at level 4?
Yeah, so all of the wizard's ability score improvements, they get one at 4, and then at 8, 12, 16, and 19.
So instead of taking the ability modified, I took the feat, and the feat of wood elf magic, which lets you learn the magic of the primal woods, which are revered and protected, and it basically gives you the ability to you can learn one druid cantrip of your choice and the spells Long Strider and Pass Without Trace, and you get to cast them without expending a spell slot. But I think it's you can only do it once per long rest, and they are wisdom based. So you are kind of drawing from a less, at least for me, a magic user, it's definitely more of a ranger, I think, feat. But I like the idea that because I'm playing a Lythari, it felt like it fit. I also the cantrip that I picked was what was the cantrip I picked? Hold on, I got it written down. Primal Savagery.
Oh, I love it.
It makes your teeth and your nails kind of intense, and I felt like that was perfect for this wolf-like wood elf. So I really did, as much as I feel like I'll totally cop up that I did min-max pieces of this character, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. It's some of the fun of building a new character. I really did try to stick to the flavor of Ralph himself, of being a wood elf Bladesinger. So a lot of my spells are blade based. The feat I picked was wood elf magic, and yeah, it's fun having being able to just pop off a Long Strider without spending a spell slot is also really cool. And Pass Without Trace, which I do use several times in the arc that we're playing.
Such a good spell. Let's see, are there any other fun little tidbits of mechanics that you put into Ralph that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
Let me think here. Tidbits of mechanics. Something that I can maybe say now without giving anything away, this will be a little Easter egg for anybody who goes through the extra content for you guys you can kind of pay more attention to as you listen to the upcoming episodes. Ralph's blade, Jeremy, is a sentient weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of, in D&D, there's a lot of blades that have a being or an entity or a consciousness embedded within them. And there's always kind of some little like features around that, but I won't go into any further detail than that. I won't tell you anything about the Jeremy himself, because I think that we'll see pieces of that later on in the story. But it was something that I was very specific about when talking to Thomas. He goes, I want to give you some magic stuff. So what is some like special magic stuff you can have? And so we got that. I have my bag of holding, the sentient blade that is both my wizard's book and my spellcasting focus, and I have one other magical item that's a ring that I don't know if I should say what it is. I will. I think it's not like I'm giving anything away, because when I use it, it's just pretty obvious I'm using it. But I have a magical ring. This is something Thomas came up with that he felt like would fit. Oh, did I let slip that I'm part of the Zentarim during this?
Yes.
That is a spoiler. Isn't it? That's a big spoiler. Do we need to cut that?
No, this is going to be coming out after that point, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay. Okay, so everyone knows that Jeremy yells.
Yes.
Okay, good. So my main thing with Jeremy was that he's rather a lot of sentient blades will dominate the wielder, or they'll try and like take over them and change what their whole thing is, or they'll curse them and make it so that like all of your attacks are worse while you're wielding the blade, and you can't unbind yourself from it. Jeremy is a annoying entity, and so the thing that Thomas and I worked on with is if someone other than Ralph wields him, he distracts them. And makes it harder to cast magic, harder to concentrate. So yeah, that was the idea, that he would be if anybody tried to pick him up, he would have caused them some issues. But then the last magic item is a ring that creates a bubble of silence.
Indeed, man, just so many fun surprises with good old Ralph.
I love it. If anybody knows the Dritz-Do'Urden books, Jarlaxle is one of my favorite characters.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like Jarlaxle has like an endless amount of weird little trinkets and objects that have their own like really just deeply unique and fascinating uses and backgrounds. And I like to think that Jeremy is 100% not there. Like Jarlaxle is like the pinnacle of this type of character, but I like to think that Jeremy is like in the works. You know what I mean? He's kind of on his way to being that kind of, if he lives long enough, to kind of building that repertoire of unique little interesting baubles and items.
Yeah. One thing that's kind of fun with Jarlaxle that connects to this campaign is Lance has a bracer of flying daggers, which mechanically comes from Dragon Heist as one of the items that Jarlaxle has in his retinue.
That's awesome. He's always one of my favorite characters, and I love when he shows up. And I definitely, when it came to playing Ralph, I was definitely trying to channel that. Is he here to help us? Is he here to hurt us? Is he someone we can trust, or someone we need to fight? And anytime Jarlaxle shows up, those are the questions that you have to ask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is fun kind of seeing this inspiration now, like a little bit of Jarlaxle in Ralph, a little bit of Brunner Battlehammer in Greyik back in the day.
Yeah. Nothing is new under the sun. I love drawing from different pieces of literature and characters that I find fun and interesting, and so absolutely.
Yeah, and like we mentioned earlier with the signature spells, we want that opportunity to be Gandalf for a little bit, because Gandalf's awesome.
Yeah, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't want to be Gandalf?
Well, I'm going to see if maybe I can sneak one last tidbit from you. Is there any chance that we can hear Ralph's full name as a little Easter egg for our listeners?
Did I write it down? Let me look at my chat with Thomas. I don't know if I wrote it down yet. You know what? I didn't write it down. I just said it's an elf name, but it's just the short version. So we could just make it up right now. How about Ralph Farley
Perfect. Chris Farley's brother, Ralph Farley.
Who's going to be ended up living in a van down by the river, for sure.
That he is. Oh, man. Dude, Josh, this has been a phenomenal episode of Crunch Squad. Thanks for joining us here.
Dad, thank you, dude. This is so much fun.
And thanks to all of our listeners out there in podcast world for listening to this week's bonus episode of Crunch Squad. We hope you've enjoyed listening as much as we have enjoyed talking about wizards that should not exist. Now, from wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a review. It helps boost our ratings through each of the podcast services, puts our show in other people's recommended feeds, and it lets us know that you like what we're doing. If you want to write something maybe a little bit longer than a review, you could also email us at icastfireball2020@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and we're hoping to get the word out there and set this podcast on fire. Now, to get the most recent up-to-date content from all of us here, please follow us on Instagram and Twitter with the handle icastfireball20. There you can get possible sneak peeks of upcoming episodes, interesting insights from the players in DM, and behind-the-scenes shots of us making this incredibly fun world. A couple other shout-outs. First is going to be to our sister podcast, Improv Tabletop, where I am the one who sits behind the GM screen there. We've got a campaign following the Avatar Legends tabletop system, as well as a backlog of 1-month adventures using Fate Accelerated. Lots of fun over there, so whether you just like other tabletop games, whether you like improvisation, or whether you like hearing my dulcet tones a little bit more, go ahead and give those a listen. Josh, where can our listeners find you?
You can find me at Joshua the Hippie on Twitter, and I think it's Joshua the Hippie, if I remember correctly. But to be completely honest, it could be Josh the Hippie. My memory is not so great these days. But yeah, or you can look us up at the Titan Pod on Twitter, or just go to Google and type in Titan Pod, the Titans of Altera, and you should be able to find some stuff about that podcast that we're making. It's just it's going kind of slow at the moment. We just got an editor, which is super exciting. So we'll be releasing episodes somewhat regularly, about once or twice a month, finishing out our 3rd season. So we've got 2 seasons in the books. And if you want a ton of stuff to listen to, you can check out Sneak Attack, the Sneak Attack podcast, original D&D adventure, where I play a surly dwarf named Grayek Stronghammer, and my wife plays Brenna, the bard. And you can definitely see our marriage evolve in the show. It's pretty wonderful. But yeah, that's a full arc. You can see a full D&D adventure story from start to finish, which was rare for us, and it's fun to. It was a fun, one of the best experiences of my life. Yeah, so go see this wonderful Gray character we've been talking about, and you'll get to see that fun little moment with Akio struggling to copy spells into his book. And almost dying all the time. Oh, so great, but he no longer fears death, so that's okay. He's gonna live forever. Yeah, good old Akio. Well, lastly, everybody, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends and fellow wacky adventurers. But until next time, I am Ned, your host for Crunch Squad, and we've been joined by Josh, the guy who played Ralph. Keep the fire going, everybody, and we'll see you next time.